slopes.
All right. And you can see an example of a volcano in the picture. Which volcano is that in the picture? Joshua? What does it say? You said it, I heard you. Does it say Mount Everest? And we learned how to read these little captions earlier on in the year. John?
Mount Etna.
Mount Etna. Where's Mount Etna?
It's on the island of Italy.
Good. That's very close to Italy in Europe. Next paragraph. Come on.
Hills are land formations that are like mountains but not as high. Most have rounded slopes. Not all land formations have slopes. A plain is a large, flat landform with little relief. Relief is the difference in elevation between high and low places. In the middle of the United States is a very large plain known as the Great Plains. Plains form in different ways, but all plains have the same topography. Right Mitten is flat on top, but the top is small and elevated, so it's not important.
Right. The Great Plains. Look at that picture. Remember I told you I'm from Minnesota. This very much looks like where I'm from, the Great Plains. Starts here, goes down up here to Texas. Next paragraph. Kevin.
Landforms from ice. Look at the landforms shown below. They look different from each other, but they have one thing in common. They were both formed by glaciers. A glacier is a large, thick sheet of ice. As glaciers move, they change the land around and beneath them. For example,
Use the parentheses to help you find it out.
moraines.
Good. Moraines.
Moraines are long, low hills formed by minerals called
Materials
carried by glaciers. Moving ice cracks the land beneath it. Rocks and other materials are picked up and carried along. This material is deposited when glacier melts.
What's a glacier? It's right there. Nicole?
A glacier is a large, thick sheet of ice.
Large, thick sheet of ice. And what is ice made of? Tiffany? Remember, we were talking about how there are two major ways that land formations are changed, which are what? By
Water and wind.
water and wind. And here we're seeing an example of more than one way that water can change a landform, a glacier. Good. Next paragraph. Amanda?
How can you tell a moraine from an ordinary hill? A moraine contains rocks, sand, and trees. If you look into a moraine, you find these things deposited together. You do not find them together in most. There are many moraines in the northern part of the United States. Some are more than 200 kilometers long.
All right. Doriana?
Other landforms produced by glaciers are glacial flows. These features form when a glacier expands and splashes the rocks beneath. As the glacier melts, grooves can be seen in both.
If you look in the picture, you can see the grooves. But that's a bunch of rock, and you can kind of see the little grooves that the glacier was forming when it went through. All right, now we're going to move on to landforms of sand. Denise?
Some landforms are made of sand and small bits of rocks. These landforms move and are shaped by both wind and water. Landforms of sand are more easily changed than landforms of rock.
Okay, thank you. Stacy?
A sandboard is a sand hill that is made
and shaped by wind. As wind blows over the sand dunes, this can change the dune shape or even move the full dune. Some dunes move as much as 30 meters, 100 feet a year.
What's a sand dune? America? Yes. Sand, large groups of sand that are basically made and shaped by wind. Where would you find a sand dune, do you think, besides what is said in this paragraph? Think about it. A lot of sand moved and shaped by wind. Where would that happen? Devon? The beach? Good. Where else? Tiffany? The desert. Very, very well-known place for that to happen. Yes, question.
Is sand dunes like sinking? Like, does it sink the sand dunes?
Sand dunes do not sink. From what I know, sand dunes do not sink because in California, on the West Coast, near Los Angeles, there's a very famous place for sand dunes, and people go and drive cars, special types of cars. My cousin does that. That's how I know, because I went with him. He was driving me up and down the sand dune. If you go really fast, you can get high and then get some air going down. Brian? Yeah.
Like wind, water can also move sand. Water waves and currents reshape beaches, forming barriers, islands, and sand split, extending out into the water from the end of many islands. Sand spits and barrier islands are long, narrow piles of sand that help protect the mainland from wave erosion. They are found along the Atlantic coast and the Gulf of Mexico.
And the next paragraph. Thank you, Brian. Andy.
Rivers too can make sand landforms. Rivers carry sand from the land they flow through. When the flow of a river slows, the sand settles. This makes a landform called a sandbar. The Pacific coast has many sandbars where rivers flow into the ocean.
Next page, landforms from water. Jawan, first paragraph, please.
The topography of the southwestern United States is beautiful and varied. There you will find landforms such as Mesa Verde. A mesa is a tall, flat-topped rock feature. Mesa is a Spanish word meaning table. A mesa form as running water roads that surround the water. The Southwest is also home to many canyons and unusual rock formations, like those in Monument Valley.
Great, thank you. And the next paragraph, Joshua.
Canyons are deep valleys with steep sides. They are found throughout the southwest. The Grand Canyon in Arizona is the largest land canyon in the world. The rushing water of Colorado River plays through the many layers of rocks to make this now deep canyon. Much of the topography of the Southwest was sourced from erosion by the Colorado River and streams that flow into it.
All right, so let's take a break and go back to the pictures we were looking at when we started the lesson. We already talked about the mountains and the plains, and here are 3 examples of what we're talking about now. These are little examples of mesas that have the flatter tops. How were these formed based on what we just read? Based on what Dariana just read. So water and wind are coming out to form these. And then here we have two pictures of the Grand Canyon, one in your book and one here. You can see the river very clearly in your picture, and you can see the river very clearly here. How was this canyon formed? If you're not raising your hand, you better pay attention. I'm expecting a lot more hands up than this. Come on.
It's formed by water and went into the water.
Yes. A long, long time ago. Millions of years, like what Andy and I were doing with these. Water was slowly changing the landscape. This is the top of the canyon. That river used to be up here. And wind and water, over millions and millions of years, were slowly changing the formation of that land. Could someone just sit there and watch it happen? No. Yeah, they would die like many times over and over again, right? It takes a long time. Then this Colorado River is very, very fast. I told you last year I hiked down the Grand Canyon. The water was moving very fast. You cannot swim across it, but it's moving a little bit slower than I guess it used to. Before, it used to be very, very rapidly, and you couldn't see it changing the land so much, but it used to have a very, very, even stronger current than it does now, from what I was told by the park ranger when I was there. And even here, we're seeing water. You see, as John had noticed before, the water is forming, or is cutting between the two rocks. This is another example of water forming the land on both sides. Yes?
You said, you see, there are two rocks, right? Can rocks be, can plants grow out of rocks?
What we're seeing right here, this is actually, well, it's many rocks forming together, right? But it's actually one rock, and the river is literally